My name is Diane Hardy, and I am here to present to you my interpersonal communication project. But first, I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself. I am currently working on my Master's of Arts degree in Human Services Counseling with the Cognitive and Life Coaching. And I count it a blessing because I only have a semester to go, and then I am off to embark upon this beautiful field of coaching. But what I'm here to tell you about is the things that we've learned in this interpersonal communication class. And the important thing is we've learned about how to achieve or work on our overarching goal. And what I'd like to do is to define the overarching goal. An overarching goal is receiving a level of self-acceptance where you're able to be open to finding out what causes you to have such maybe a defeatist attitude, if you will. And Burley Allen speaks of this. But in an overarching goal, what you do is you take a look at your personal issues, the personal issues that causes you to have that defeatist attitude and causes you to have this feeling of unworthiness. Now, when you look at having a feeling of unworthiness, I wanted to also touch on first how we dialogue in communication. And in dialoguing, it is including the listener and the talker. And what it is it's giving the listener and the talker, they come to an understanding, a clear understanding with each other. And this is told by Stewart. But what I wanted to say too is that my overarching goal having to do with dialogue is that I have a tendency to try to figure out what it is that I'm going to say to a person when I'm listening to them. And that can cause me to kind of be distorted in listening. While I count myself to be a good listener, I found that that's something that I need to work on. So what I'm working on is becoming a more dialogical listener. And in becoming a more dialogical listener, I'm able to concentrate more on clarifying what it is that they are saying and building on the conversation. And as the conversation builds, then I don't know what I'm talking about. But that would mean that I would be listening with everything, my mind, and not just my ears. And the interesting thing about that is that Stewart talks about this. He says that a good listener is defined by one who is mindful of the wide spectrum of listening. And when thinking about that, a mindful listener is one who he doesn't just listen with his ears, but he feels and he also sees. So that means we have to use our sight, and we have to use our hearing. We use our whole overall spectrum. That's interesting because it would help us if we would do that. Also, keep in mind that if in enlarging a conversation, if we're on overload, then we're not going to be any good as a listener. And the reason why is because if you ever notice, sometimes you get a feeling when you're off kilter, your stomach begins to tighten, and your brain you're not able to think, and that's known as the flat brain syndrome because your brain goes flat. You can't think as well. And so when these things happen, you're off kilter and you cannot be an effective communicator. So that takes me to looking at behavioral blend. And as I embarked upon my behavioral blend and learned about these things, it caused me to look at some of the things in my background, as we talked about. It causes me to look at some of my positive influences and some of my negative influences. And I'm only going to touch on a few. As you can see here, there are other listings, but there are a few here. First of all, my background, I am an African-American woman. And I've come from a two-parent home where they worked hard for what they got. And I also came from a loving family. So I love hard. And one of the things also is that I work hard at what I want to achieve. And also sometimes it causes me to be a perfectionist. But then here it is. In my positive influences, my family values are very strong, and what causes me to want to excel in this field. Also, in my positive influences, I have people before me, family members that were great leaders. My father, great leader. He's the deacon, chairman of the deacon board at his church, and he's been there for years. My mom was a strong leader. My uncle, he was a strong leader and inspired me in music. And then there's these negative influences. I had a tendency to want to be, I would have to say that sometimes I'm kind of a little bit more I hold back more, or I'm just kind of a little bit more subdued. I tend to be too cautious. That's what I really wanted to say. And as I'm being too cautious, sometimes I tend to also be a little insecure because I always wanted to be accepted and I always felt left out. This was as I was little. These were negative influences that I had that caused me to feel this way. So then when you look at the behavior lens, and as we look at Carbonell came up with a 4 basic type of temperament. And this is concerning your behavior, referred to as the 4 disc personality types. And what it is it's the way we act, the way we respond, the way we think, the way we feel. Now, as we looked at this, I took a test, and the test was very interesting, and it was an assessment. It's called Uniquely You. And it came up with the behavioral blend as me having SC and CS. I thought that was interesting. But one of the things that came up with this, it said that this is expected of me, that people expect me to be kind of sensitive but submissive. But then there's something that it described to me where I felt that this was me. That I think that people, because a lot of people always ask my opinion, or people always come because they want me to listen, I think they always want me to, expect me to have the answers. And that's not always the case. So the potential barriers for that is, my positive barriers would be that I'm task-oriented. I have to get the job done, just to touch on a few. Some of my negative barriers would be that I am too sensitive. And then the effects of that is that sometimes I may task when I can't see. So the effects of that would be that I may not speak out when my voice needs to be heard. That's a strong thing that I've had a problem with. But here's the thing, dealing with potential barriers. I thought in positive thinking, one of my favorite scriptures is that Philippians 4:8. Think on these things, whatsoever is pure, whatsoever is honest, whatsoever is a good report. And then I thought acknowledgement of these shortcomings that I have, that all have sinned and come short of the glory of God. And then a positive action would be, I have learned that avoiding these issues out of fear would not help me tackle that problem. So I need to knock out the noise pollution. So enter the noise pollution is biased listening. And external noise is doing too much fast talking. That gets on my nerves, that does drive me crazy. And those factors distract me from listening effectively. So my action plan is to work on my time management, to know I want to define all past experiences, but instead use them to build and improve. But definitely ask for clarification without hesitating. And I plan on changing my mindset to a positive one when it comes to my time and more boldness. Conclusion, I have really taken a look at things more carefully since the beginning of this class, and I really want to approach things differently so that it will cause me to be less insecure and feeling less inadequate. So I've looked at those things, and this class has truly been a challenge for me, and I intend on doing things differently. So thank you. God bless.